copywritten production of the Recreation Centers of Sun City Incorporated and is intended for the sole purpose of informing our Recreation Center members. Any duplication, copying, transmission, broadcast, or use, including electronic and social media, is strictly prohibited without the prior written consent from the Recreation Centers of Sun City Incorporated. Thank you for watching.
Okay, so we'll just quickly review. This is what our charter is. I think everybody's seen it at least 10 times. We know why we're here.
Shut the lights on. Just so it's...
Yeah, that's a good idea. Oh, Kevin's got the technical skills. Okay. And everybody remembers the rules, particularly respect. One person talks at a time. Have to compliment everybody. The last couple of meetings have gone very well. And this is a reminder for our guests that this is a meeting of the committee, and you're here as a guest. So if you want something done, you really have to get a hold of one of your committee members and ask them to bring the subject up. This is to repeat something that Jean normally does. This is just a reminder that out on the website we post each week the materials that you see here. So my presentation, as an example, will be posted online as soon as the meeting is over. Decided not to print everything out. Sometime soon. Monday. Okay. At the moment, then what I want to do is just talk about the next couple of weeks and what our process is here for the committee as we go forward, our next steps. So we got together and laid out what we think are the focus of this phase 3, which is to look at specific alternatives and ideas that people have to meet the needs of what we've defined and looked at over the last 4 or 5 weeks in terms of users and our members and what they do with facilities and activities. So we already had John, who gave us alternative 1, which is Performing Arts Center at the Sundial Auditorium, is complete. Today we're going to do 2 things. We're going to talk about the Performing Arts Center, and Karen's going to do that. But before we do that, I took a look at the Sun City member assessment. And I selected slides from that survey that was done. And it provides a wealth of information about what our members are looking for and what they think about Sun City. So if we're going to make decisions, I think we should have this in context for what we're doing. Then we've laid out what the agenda is for the next couple of weeks. And I just want to remind everybody, we're encouraging people, if you have ideas and you want to present them, either do a PowerPoint presentation, you could just make some documents and print them out. We have a lot of opportunity to discuss them. So I encourage you to do that. Our goal here, though, is over the next few weeks is to explore a number of opportunities, alternatives. The busy session is going to be on July 14th. At that point in time, we want to kind of wrap things together and come up with a conceptual idea of what we're going to do with the Mountain View Center and the Lakeview Center. So we're going to take all the user data that we talk and member data that we've talked about. We're going to now consider all the alternatives that people have put up. And now we're going to bring it together and have one.
Question, I'm sorry to interrupt, but
yes.
Are we going to get a printout of the new agenda because it's completely different from what we have?
Yes, this is an update. And yes, you will.
When?
Monday.
Monday.
Jean says this will be posted, my presentation will be posted on the website, but maybe we just made it up this morning, but we're working up to the last minute to get things. Yes, sir.
So my wife and I talked to John about 2 days ago. She was going to do it today by phone, but we decided we're going to do it on the 30th. She's going to be here. 15-minute, she's got a completely, she's an architectural engineer, and she's done presentation of what Mountain View is and how it's going to look the way she envisions it. So can you add it to the
We certainly can. Do you have
30th?
Did you email it to John?
No. We talked.
I just need the name and we can adjust it.
Yeah.
Yes.
So on the 30th, she'd like to do that.
Yeah. Jean?
My computer is broken right now. The computer club is helping me fix it. So in the meantime, it may be a little later than Monday, it might be Tuesday. But if anybody has anything they want posted to the site, send it me an email. And you want to know my board email. You will. Thank you.
So if you send us the information about your name and topic, we'll get you on the agenda. And we'll update the agenda and email it. We'll email it out to the committee as soon as we can. I'll make that adjustment before we send it out. But the goal then is, as I mentioned, what we want to do is bring it together at this point in time here where we can come up with a conceptual idea of what buildings and what activities and what functions will be at those two locations. And from that activity, what we want to do, and that's called just a conceptual plan. And it doesn't mean that you have a map with everything laid out on it. It just says we're going to have a mini golf course, as an example. Once we get that conceptual design done, then what we're going to do is we're going to turn it over to an architect who's going to be hired as a consultant to put together what's called a site plan. Yes, ma'am.
I must be missing something.
Okay.
I thought this was for Mountain View, so I'm just kind of confused as to why Lakeview is also mentioned in there.
That's the charter. We've discussed that for quite a while.
So this is going to be both rec centers then? Oh.
So I just
This came up, but
Yeah.
please, Karen, go ahead.
So for clarification, the original charter was to suspend the plan for the Mountain View project and the pickleball courts at Lakeview. So it is
Okay.
overlapping,
Right.
overlapping task. Yeah.
Okay. So that's our roadmap. And again, if anybody wants to get on the agenda, there's room to do that. Just kind of, when I looked at it, I said, what are the big things that we need to talk about both today and in the next few weeks? And one is, the premise has been now that the large single-purpose theater conceived of the Mountain View Option Plan 2 was big and expensive. And what we're trying to look at is what the user, our community's demand is, and what are the alternatives for maybe something smaller, multi-purpose. So we're going to explore in the next couple of weeks some various ideas. They're this big, that big. So we'll have an opportunity to see what those are. We always have to consider what's the demand of the people who are using the facility versus how big it needs to be, what its location is, and of course what it's going to cost. When we're all done by the July 14th, we want to answer those questions. The other one that we talked about quite a bit that was in the original plan was pickleball. And of course, as our statistics have shown that we've looked at over the last few weeks, and you'll see some more today, it's one of those growing activities that we have within Sun City. So we currently have 27 courts. We're now going to explore over the next week or two how many more should be added, can be added, and at what cost. So that's an open question. There are clearly two big things. Option 2 up above had a very expensive idea of moving pickleball up to Lakeview as an example, which is why the whole thing was put on hold. So we'll focus on those things. And so now what I want to do is focus our attention on the Sun City Needs Assessment. This was something that was performed by ASU on behalf of Sun City to survey our members. The report I have is over 5,000 surveys, and most of the questions that were answered had anywhere from 2,500 to 4,500 people respond. The takeaway is hugely important. This is what ASU said. Based on those survey results, we can then conclude that the results accurately reflect the entire population of Sun City. That's hugely important. That doesn't mean that one club says, I want something. This is what basically the whole citizenship of our community is saying. So there's 300 and some pages to this report, and I've selected about 8 or 9 items out of that report to share with you today. But I would really encourage everybody to take a look at it over the next couple of weeks. And again, it's out on our website. Okay, so this is from page 46 from that report. And the one thing that it asked is, it said to all the members, which activities do you use and how frequently do you use them? And the part that's, and there's a lot of numbers here, you don't need to look at them all. The part that's interesting is, it says to how many members don't walk, and it says 27%, which means how many people do walk? 73%. Huge. Anybody that's walked around pretty much knows that that's a pretty reflective number of what we do in our community. If you look at some of the next items here, you'll see cardio fitness, water walking, weight training, golf, sitting by the pool, mini golf, pickleball. These are lap swimming. This kind of validates the statistics we were looking at earlier in terms of how many people use the golf course, swimming fitness centers, swimming pools, and so forth. This just gives you the same thing in a different way. So the previous page on 46 showed the activities that people said that they do most. This is the bottom half of the list that shows activities that people do least. And now we're talking about the population. So where it says none, it just says it's all in the 90s on this page. In other words, 90% plus of the population is not doing these activities. That's the takeaway. Any surprises on here for anybody?
I was surprised with pickleball.
What's pickleball?
Oh, I mean, the math.
80% didn't play.
You were, what's surprising about pickleball?
That
80% have
don't.
never done it or
Yeah,
don't do it. Yeah.
okay, but 20% do.
I
Yeah,
have a question. How come you have on there, oh, it's not, I don't see it up there now, but it was up there, it said dance lessons. Nothing about social dancing on there at all.
no, I can't answer that. This is what the survey
Yeah,
was. And
dance
these are the
class,
results.
dance class recital has nothing to do with social dancing, which is big here.
And there may be some other activities that
I'm sure.
I didn't highlight
Sure.
on this
That's fine.
report here. So
It was just a question.
I'm trying to, I would really encourage everybody to look at the report because they list everything. I didn't do it here on purpose of real estate. But there's a top and there's a bottom and then there's some in the middle that are there. And talking about pickleball again, and I picked this out, but they have like, I don't know, 15 of these charts for different activities. I just did this one as an illustration of what's available. And of course, we have 20%, as you saw on the previous slide, 20% of our members play pickleball. And the part that's here, and it shows none, people that don't, and it goes by years that you live in Sun City. And I thought that this was sort of a typical profile of what I saw with other activities. If you live here longer, you tend to get older.
Yeah.
And so as you get older, sometimes your activities become a little bit less. So I use this as an example, but of the 10 or 15 charts that are out there, they have a very similar profile. I haven't found one that goes in the other direction yet. Yes, sir.
Gene just pointed out that that survey is hard copies printed out back there. Gene, if you can hold that up. Thank you.
And it's available on the
Website.
RCSC website.
That's
There's
right.
350 pages, so I don't know if you want to download it yourself.
Don't download
Read it.
Yeah. So it's amazing. But anyhow, that information's out there. So that's kind of a general takeaway from most activities that you see the length of time and age get a little less activity. There was another really interesting question out there that will dwell on what the scope of our meeting is, and it says, how supportive are you of the upcoming next 10 years facility remodels? And it listed two, Mountain View and Lakeview. So on a scale of 1 to 4, the numbers are all in the 3s, which is considered very high. So it really says that the membership within Sun City wants us to address these two centers. That's a takeaway. Okay? And actually, it was kind of interesting. There's just a slight favorability towards doing Lakeview first. Slight. But nonetheless, not enough to make a difference. But it does show you that the membership is very supportive of the work that we're doing. So hopefully we'll come up with something they're happy with. Then there was another question that said, you know, what would be your priorities for future facilities? Right? And there's a whole bunch. And again, I just cut off the top of the page for an illustration here. But these were the ones that were at the top, right? And it said, whether you're full-time or part-time, or it says no, which means you're just a full-time retired person. But these were the highest ones, and people were saying, yeah, like a restaurant, coffee shop, internet cafe, digital gaming room, clubhouse style lounge, sports bar, and there's a whole bunch more, but they get a lot less in terms of what they're. Then there's a question at the bottom that says, areas listed as others include security. These were good, right? Trash pickup, grounds maintenance, maintenance of facilities. So I didn't really see anything that called out some of the specific things that we're addressing ourselves here. Then this was also an interesting question. It said, what is the one thing we should do to make the recreational facilities more attractive to a potential person moving into our community? So if you own a home, it's very important, of course, that we make sure that we keep the community revitalized with new people that come in. So this section of the report is maybe 20, 30 pages. I just picked out something to give you an illustration and to call your attention to go look at it. But the summary at the front of it said that people said that they're interested in a broad range of activities, including fitness centers, no surprise, golf, also no surprise, pickleball was mentioned, walking, swimming. So for me, the big three is always fitness centers, swimming pools, and golf, if you reflect back on the statistics we've shown. But right below that level, the next highest in that area is bowling and football. So it supports that. In terms of a specific comment, I cut this out. People mentioned an auditorium, and this is what they said about it. What I don't have from that survey is how many people said this. Was it one person or 5,000 people? So it's a little bit out of context for me. But nonetheless, when you look at this section, keep that in mind, because it doesn't say how many people want all these things. But we don't know that yet. I'd have to follow up with somebody at ASU to find that out. And another important question was, how likely are you to participate in the following activities? And now here, it was, from what I gathered from the design of the survey, is they listed the activities and then asked people if they were interested. That's very different than saying, the line is blank and what do you want? So again, when you read these things, always try to keep it in context, that you don't infer something that's really not there. But nonetheless, it's on a scale of 1 to 4, but these numbers are really high, like 3.58. That's one of the highest numbers that I've seen going through the survey. I'm not sure what website development means. We should redo it. Computer, internet, social. Indoor cycling would be something for a fitness center, as an example. Leave that. Another question. When you're using the club facilities, do you feel the space allocated is sufficient? And here the takeaway was quite interesting to me. 82% of respondents feel that the space allocated for club facilities is adequate. That was higher than I would have thought. So that was a surprise to me. But then down below, they had a comment that says reasons why 18% feel that they're not, is they says there's not enough pool space because of all the activities. Fitness rooms are too small. Bell's social hall was too small. I'm not familiar with that room. And more pickleball courts was another primary complaint. So here's the people that are happy, and here's the ones that feel we need to do additional more. Yes, sir.
I use the Village Social Hall very often. That is a huge hall. I can't understand why anybody would say it's too small.
Well, that's what entered my mind, but
It
this
says
is what it says. Yes, ma'am.
It depends on who wants to use it. For our club, it's too small.
Okay.
For dance, social dancing, it depends on what club, how many people you have in participation there. When you've got like a line dance club that has between 550 and 600 members, that's a problem.
Okay, so I'm like, too
Okay,
small.
thank you.
That's a
You
perspective.
get some idea of what to do.
Jeff? Where it
Yes,
says 82% of the respondents feel the space is okay, how many of those 82% don't use it in the first place, so it's fine with them? We gotta be careful about that number.
About 2/3.
You know, I think that information is in the report. I just can't recollect what the answer is of it. But it's every one of these questions, they break it into male, female, age, length of time living. So they take the survey questions and gives you all that data, which is why the report's so good.
But they did have one flaw in that survey, you couldn't opt out of the question. If they had a question that didn't pertain to you, you had to answer something.
Well,
You couldn't get past the question.
I skipped a couple.
So was this just like a summary then? This isn't verbatim, but one section from the report?
Right, yeah, it's in quotations. I copied them.
So, okay.
The word, when I put them in quotes,
Okay,
yeah, none of this is mine. This is all,
Okay.
I just copied and pasted from the report.
verbatim, okay.
So we did see question up here, that's right out of the report. There must be 100 questions in here, I don't know, quite a bit. The other thing that was interesting, this is another interesting question. It said, our community is 63 years old. To ensure we remain a vibrant and modern community, the following facility possibilities by level of importance. So this is, so it was kind of flabbergasted me of all the things that I could do. I didn't have solar on my list, nor recycling. But this is what the report says, right? And then, but the third one kind of hit. Replace and remodel buildings. Well, that would be our committee. So it also says it's anything 3 or above is really a high rating. It says that there's a large majority of people that want that done. So this is another one though, when you look at it, I'm not sure about the construction of the question. In other words, did they ask you what you think it is, or did they just give you as possibilities and you pick these? I'm not familiar. But if you read all the different ways that they answer this question, you can get a feel for it. And then there was another one that obviously caught my eye. It said, if you could ask the board of directors to focus on 3 things, what would they be? And of course, they came up with 35. So I said, okay, my colleagues and I are on it. Yeah. They did take all the responses and they put them into these categories. But the only one that I thought was important for us here today, of course, was the one that said facilities and amenities. And here are the same themes come across. Fitness centers, hours of operation, internet, landscaping, maintenance should be, improved, modernized. You could easily interpret that to be Mountain View and Lakeview. Then it actually says Lakeview, to reinforce that idea. Pools, repairs, restaurants, upgrades. So
It says Mountain View.
It says Mountain View, not Lakeview.
I'm sorry, Mountain View. And so that's a variety of things. But clearly they want things done in terms of improving our facilities and amenities within Sun City. That's the takeaway for me. I'll let John do the other items. Then it had a question that said final comments, which now here you were free, the person was free to put whatever they wanted in here. But here was the takeaways that the authors of the report put in. They said, in conclusion, they said, and I'll jump down, it says, participants expressed their desire for more activities and classes for younger residents. Better quality fitness machines and equipment, that would be improvements to fitness centers in general. Improved golf course maintenance, that seemed to be a recurring theme throughout the report. And more pickleball courts. So when I looked at this final question, I said, and I reflected back on the 300 pages and all the charts, this seems to be a good capture of what I saw as recurring themes. But if you read the report, I'll call it to your attention, see if you come to the same conclusion.
But that's not verbatim then, because it's not.
No, I didn't put it in quotes,
Okay.
but it is verbatim. I copied and pasted it just the way it says.
Okay.
So that's what, this was their last sentence. In conclusion, this is what the authors wrote. The only thing I did was bold the bottom for our ease.
Comment?
Oh, yes,
You said there were about 5,000 people that responded to the survey, or 4,000?
5,000.
5,000, and pickleball, the club has what, about 1,000 members? So that's,
I don't know, yeah,
it's a very large number.
It's
right?
a huge number, 20%.
yeah.
Yeah, so that's 20% of the 5,000 are all pickleball club members.
Well, we don't know if all pickleball members.
Well,
You can't say that.
Yeah, I would,
because if you're a pickleball club member, you're going to say, yeah, we need more courts.
okay, fair. And so the people that swim and all everything else, so that's what, the survey asked sometimes the same thing different ways, so it was kind of clever how they did it.
Obnoxiously.
It was a pain in the neck
And not every question had 5,000 people responded to it. Some of them had 3,000, some had 4, but 5,000 people completed it for a big portion of the survey. So if you read the report, it will sometimes say on this question, 3,500 people responded to this question. All of those are really significant. In other words, you can infer that that's what the population wants. So I don't have any information so this is a summary of what the data has in there. And this is what they wrote.
So 80% don't play pickleball, so heard of that.
Okay, now I did a little bit of my own calculation here. And, I took the chart, the very first chart that I showed you, how many people participate. And if you subtract the numbers, it'll show you this is what percent of the population participate in these activities. Then I says, well, if 73% of the population are walking, and there's 38,000 members in the community, that means 27,000 people are out walking around. And that's what they do as an activity. And they have like 4 categories for fitness center. I kind of lumped them together. And this is no surprise. It says 55% of our membership is a fitness center. And that's very consistent when we looked at the statistics 3 or 4 weeks ago that talked about how many people were in a fitness center. Yes, ma'am.
Where do they get their member count from? That is members that RCSC shows the club has that many?
Has nothing to do with club.
No, that's us.
Has nothing. All I did was said, I took this number, 73 times 38,000, and you get 27. So when somebody says, so the first chart said 73% of people walk. Well, I said to myself, how many people are in Sun City? Oh, there's 38,000. If I do the math, it's 27,000.
Except only 5,000 answered the questionnaire.
I don't think you
Only
can
5,000 answered the survey.
Okay, but you missed the point on the first part. 5,000 is representative of the total population. That was the very first point that the ASU authors made.
I don't think you can use those numbers. I don't think they.
Well, I'm explaining the report.
Okay, I'm just saying.
You can agree with it or don't disagree, but this is what the report says. All I did was take page 46 and combined it with the page at the end and did simple mathematics. But the parts that's kind of, so this is, and there was no surprise to me on this. I mean, I'm out and everybody's walking around. Fitness centers, no surprise. Our own statistics show how many people visit fitness centers. Golf is big, no surprise here. Swimming pools are big. I don't think that's no surprise to any of the statistics we saw. Pickleball is 20% of, and it's this many people. And, you know, based on the data we looked at, it's no surprise there either. You know, the only thing you can ask yourself, do you think any of these are going up or going down? Yes,
I
ma'am.
don't want to be argumentative, but when you are not including all the activities in Sun City and just picking out
Oh.
a handful, that's not a accurate description of how many are using this.
It's an accurate prescription of how many people are using these activities. I did not list all 85 different activities we have. But you have the report there, you're welcome to do the math, just like I did. All I did was pick out the top and to illustrate the concept of what you could look at.
There are always limitations to statistics. We should acknowledge that. Pickleball, for example, there are 1,000 people, 1,000 members
Yeah,
of the club.
yeah.
And that shows, for example, 76
Yes, that's, you can't do that.
playing per week. And I don't believe that there's 7,600, 50. I mean, it's just,
All it
I'm just
suggests,
saying that
what it
statistics,
implies
you have to take.
is of the 7,600, 1,000 of them belong to a club.
Yeah.
And the others do not. They just go up and play.
I would say
Right,
skip that
non-club
slide.
members.
That's what it says.
I get you, that's what I was saying. Statistics, you have to take them with a grain of salt. I acknowledge pickleball, I acknowledge pickleball's trend and its importance. I'm just saying,
Okay, but again, don't infer the wrong conclusion of what it says. If it says golf is 14,000, that doesn't mean there's 14,000 in a golf club. I'll bet you the golf club is probably a couple thousand. But how many people play golf from time to time? And if you look at the detailed charts that are in the report, it'll show you how many do it. You'll see how many people play occasionally. But that occasionally is in here. And that's all it says. Yes, ma'am.
But Jeff, you're using your numbers of the 5,000 people that responded.
Yes.
So you have to take, what did you say, 38,000? So 33,000 people didn't respond. You can't count those people in your percentages.
You can extrapolate from the
You have to take those people out.
Can I
Okay,
add
Now, I
just
know
a
where you're
second.
coming from,
But-
but it can
No,
get
what you
skewed
did-
one way or the
What
other.
you just said is not correct. If you go back to the very first slide that I had,
Right.
it said you took a sample of the population that had 5,000 people. Because of that large number of 5,000 versus the population of 38,000,
Yes.
whatever the 5 say is what the 38 say.
According to the survey.
How do you
That's mathematics, that's how it works.
Actually,
When you take a survey, that's what it does. I don't want to get into a statistical report here today, but that's exactly what the report says.
I'll agree with you because I don't know the difference.
Yeah, but that's what it means. And that's what I said in the very beginning. 5,000 is a huge number. So when it says that, it says, when you look at these survey results, it's as if you talked to 38,000 by talking to that 5. That's what it means. Okay? So with one second, go ahead, yes?
I just wanted to add, just to give an absolute number based on 2022 data, we had a total of 21,943 different cardholders that used monitored activity areas in 2022. So that is a accurate through the turnstiles number,
Right.
versus the extrapolation.
That data would indicate that this is much larger.
Yeah. So just to give an absolute number to that, that's the true 2022 number.
Okay, thank you. Yes, sir.
I'm not saying much different than you are, I'm just saying that at the very beginning of your first slide, ASU folks said, according to statistics,
Yes.
if you sample 5,000 out of 38,000, you can trust those numbers as to extrapolate from.
To the population.
That's exactly what you're saying.
That's exactly what I'm
And I
saying.
agree with that. So I think that's what people need to understand.
that's right.
And some
That's
people
not
are-
according to you,
Huh?
it's according to ASU.
Well, no,
People who are statistics.
It's called the law of mathematics.
The survey,
That's not for me to explain.
but a survey validity.
Okay, let's keep
Survey
it done.
validity.
Skip the
Survey validity.
Got it. Okay, so Anyhow, I took these results from page 45 and 46 and did the math. I encourage each of you to go to the same pages, pick whatever activity you want. I only picked the top handful. But it goes down, there's like, I don't know, 80 of them, and you can do the math. And that's what it'll, that's how it works. So when I looked at this, and I said, what are the big messages that came out to me that reflect on the work of what the committee is doing? So very early in my presentation, I said I thought we had two challenges. One, we need to figure out a performing arts center. Is there a need? How big it should be, and what it should cost, and where it should be located, which is what we're going to do in the next couple of weeks. The same thing applies to pickleball. There's an activity that's growing. We need to decide, well, we've got this many now. Do we need this many, that many? Where should they be located, and how much money do we want to spend on it? That's just, we're going to answer those questions in the next couple of weeks. But when I read this report, I said, is there places in this report that give us some light on those two questions? So the first one I looked at is, I said, a performing arts center. And so now I summarized here the questions that I just showed you on previous slides. And I said, and I pulled these questions because I thought they were most important, but there's 100, so really have fun with them. But I said, the question of most frequent activities was a performing arts center mentioned, and the answer was, no, I didn't find any. Recreation and activity stream, was it? Yes, and I showed you that slide and what the comment. I couldn't tell from the survey if that was 50 people or 5,000 people. That wasn't clear. But when you look at the other questions, priorities for future facilities, what do we need to remain vibrant, the focus of the board, and additional comments, I didn't see a performing arts center show up in there. So there's some things that talk about, and just to be honest about this, there's a number of things that say we want activities, or it counts in some other words. This isn't definitive, but those exact words are not there. But they may be other things that you could infer from it that are there. And I looked at pickleball, and I said, oh, so out of all those, I saw it really mentioned prominently 3 times. Most frequent activities used, you saw the schedule. Recreation activities, it was listed there. Same thing, I don't know if it was just like Performing Arts Center. I couldn't tell from the question if it's a few people or a lot of people, so this is, keep it in mind. But when you talk about priorities for the future, vibrant, focus for the board, no mention of pickleball. When you get to the comments at the end, yes, as you saw that the quote that I said that people did mention that a lot for them to mention it in a report. So this is what they did, and all I did was now summarize the questions focusing on those 2 things. We're going to be talking about this a lot in the next couple of weeks as we look at various alternatives. And those alternatives, of course, will deal with these 2 in addition to many others as well.
But one thing
yes,
that screws all this up,
yep.
In the survey I took,
Yep.
there was no question about Performing Arts Center.
That's correct.
So how can you compare something when you didn't even ask the question?
Well, I'm not comparing, I'm just saying what
Well,
was
no, but
shown.
I am.
Oh. Well, you are absolutely free to do that.
But, I mean, when you don't ask the question, you can't assume an answer.
Well, yeah, I'm not assuming an answer.
You just did up there.
I said, no, I'm not assuming anything.
You just put a no on whether.
I said it's not mentioned in the report. That's what that no means.
Because it wasn't.
Because it was not.
Yeah.
Now, to your point, was that question asked? And the answer is no. Should it have been asked? In hindsight, it would have been really nice if it was.
And I sent several questions to the committee that was making the questions about that, and none of them were used.
Okay. So, but, and there's probably a few other questions I would have, okay, in hindsight, given the work that we're doing, I wish Meridia would have given us more information about what our membership wants. But this is all we got at the moment. But if you drill into it and read the questions and the responses, they give answers by demographics and age and other kinds of, you can begin to kind of get a feel for what it is. And then as it relates to a performing arts center, there might not be, it might not use that word, but there may be other words that you would normally associate with it. So I don't want to exclude those as well. And in the future, when we talk about it, I'll bring some of that information up as well. But this is the best we got. But I got to tell you, if you really want to know what the membership of Sun City is thinking, you read this 300-page report. And it's important for the board to understand everything that's in here about our members. It's important for management to know what's in this report for things that they need to address. And it's important for the members like us that are working on activities that we know what they want. So yeah, it's a good first start. Hopefully we do it again with maybe some more questions. I'd be okay with that as well. So, and again, so let's take a 5-minute break while I switch and put up another presentation. But, before I do that, we have, as I mentioned, we want to encourage committee members to come up with ideas. And when? You want to talk about it?
Oh, okay.
So she's passed on.
I kind of gave mine all away, so can I borrow yours? Okay.
If she would have sent it to me in enough time, I would have put it in a PowerPoint.
Could you turn the lights on, Gene? So, well, I can see.
I can read it over.
Oh, I know!
Okay, let's give her our undivided attention.
Okay.
Please, go ahead.
The reason I went through this work is kind of to, so people can see a little bit of a history of where this all started, where the recommendations for the Mountain View, and about the auditorium, multi-purpose auditorium gymnasium, and other options for possible the pickleball. I know it's a growing sport, and I don't have anything against pickleball, but I am against it affecting a lot of the other clubs. I know around the country it's affecting tennis players are getting upset because it's kind of taken over all their courts, but there's no reason we can't have enough pickleball courts. You've got 12 tennis courts over at Bell. There's a group of 4, a group of 3, and a group of 4.
There are 10.
My son right now, he lives in Michigan, and right now he is converting some tennis courts and stuff into pickleball courts. He's working with the city of Grand Rapids. And he said, you can get 4 pickleball courts out of 1 tennis court. That would give them 16 pickleball courts at Bell. And that's a lot of courts, you know, for it to, and I was looking at this plan here, the option A, and I'm not sure if they turned the tennis courts at Mountain View in this plan into all pickleball courts, do you know?
Yeah.
For this plan?
The original plan, no, they were going to get rid of them.
Turned all the
Right here.
tennis courts.
Are these all pickleball courts?
Option one.
Option one.
There are
We did that.
7.
We were on that original committee, we did turn all the tennis courts into.
Okay, so
So
there's
no one used
really
tennis
no,
at
if they
Bell.
can get 16 at Bell, why can't they keep at least 1 tennis court open at Mountain View for people that want to play tennis? You know, you can't just shove tennis players out of the way because of pickleball, because it is played around the country.
The numbers go back up what you just said.
Right, but does anybody use the tennis courts at Mountain View?
Very, very
It
light.
averages 1 game every 3 days.
But then people are moving in, so you have to think about that too.
Okay, I'll do a tennis presentation. on one
Oh,
of those
great.
days.
So anyway, so my point is, and about the multi-purpose auditorium gymnasium, is you might not realize it, but senior basketball is a big thing around the country. You look at, if you look at this little presentation here,
Okay.
a lot of seniors play basketball. There's a lot of senior basketball teams around the country. I mean, as an ex-basketball player, he's going to be taking my spot, so he understands basketball, and you know, you cannot eliminate all these activities just for one activity. That's just not fair to the rest of the community. I know a lot of this information is older information, but the reason I did that is because I just wanted people to kind of get a little bit of a background, and maybe they don't know where I started to begin with. So anyway, that's about all I have to say. You can read it when you take it home. I didn't want to do a presentation because to me it takes a lot of time to do that. And this way you've got it with you. I'm going to put it up. Oh, and Jean's going to be putting it up on our website. So anyway, thank you so much. Thanks.
It's really appreciated you did this. So
Thank
again,
you.
this is another good piece of information for us to have as we go through the next couple of weeks. Okay? So I'll turn it now over to Karen.
Can you hear Mary? Okay.
You nod and I'll advance the slides.
All right.
Yeah, that right.
Turn around and shoot it.
Alrighty. So I just did want to say one little thing about the statistics. You know, you hear stuff all the time about X number of Americans read the National Geographic. The way we got to that number is not by polling all 340 million Americans and see how many check the box. Instead, you pick a certain statistically valid sample of people, and you do that, and it comes to whatever it is, and you multiply that by the entire population. So that's just the role of statistics. So when ASU says that 5,000 people is enough for us to make a statement about the wider population, that's just the way statistics work. Okay, people that are very, very clever have figured out how large the sample needs to be in order to be truly representative of the entire community. So just thought I'd say it. Anyway, so last week we looked at the potential for retractable seating as a possible alternative for the presentation of fine arts things. And today we actually want to look just simply at the issue of a performing arts center, a standalone performing arts center. And I was approached about this, and we basically said we think that there are 3 other 55-plus communities in Arizona that have a PAC. Let's find out whatever we can find out about them and see if any of that might be applicable to us. So this is where, sort of where I started. And you can go ahead and advance the slides. So go ahead. So there are the 355-plus communities in Arizona. I'm going to tell you, we found out last night that this is not entirely accurate. There wasn't enough time to change everything about this, but these are the 3 that I looked at and over the past 2 weeks. So one is the Stardust Theater in Sun City West, the Renaissance Theater in Pebble Creek, which is a Robeson community that's, I don't know, Buckeye, Avondale, can't remember exactly what their address is, but it's down sort of by where the 303 and the 10 come together.
I want to say it's Goodyear.
I think it's Goodyear, I think.
Goodyear. Okay. And then finally for Green Valley, which is a community that's south of Tucson, about 30 miles south of Tucson, almost halfway to the Mexican border there. And I will make a disclaimer about that in a few minutes. But let me go back to the other 2 theaters first. So let's go ahead to the next slide. So go ahead. So the Stardust Theater in Sun City West is just going to give you some basic information about each of them. It's under 10,000 square feet and it has 296 seats in it. So the Renaissance Theater at Pebble Creek, I'm still waiting to get this number. The gal that I've had most contact with said I have to outsource that to somebody named Matt who hasn't gotten back to me. I did go back and look. Jim Wellman did a visit of this way back 15, 20 years ago, I think it was, and he said I didn't get the square footage number, but it's substantially smaller than the 35,000 square feet that we were looking at in the Mountain View option 2. Okay, so I don't have that number, hopefully we will soon, but substantially smaller. And then finally, this is the Community Performing Arts Center in Green Valley. So it has 203 seats altogether, and there are some caveats here, but the seating area, the auditorium itself is just 1,575 square feet. The stage is 806 square feet, and they have a rehearsal hall that is actually larger than the seating area. And I'll show you a map of that afterwards. Okay, let's move on to the next slide here. Okay, so these are just some pictures. Some of you joined us for the tour of this facility at the beginning of March, I think it was. So you've got the external, this is at the Kunz, as they call it, the Kunz, I don't know how they pronounce it. The Kunz Recreation Center, that's basically, it's right next door to the softball field there where Stardust Theater and Arch Johnson come together. They've got a rec center there, and this is the Stardust Theater. This is what it looks like on the inside. You'll notice that it is carpeted, and there are no steps. It's all ramped seating, and they get 296 seats there. Okay, let's go on. We're going to sort of drill down a little bit on the Stardust Theater. You can go ahead and put the next thing up. We actually got all this wonderful information from them. And this is more than you're going to want to digest all at once, but the thing that I think is really important here is that when you look at two of the biggies, it's the auditorium and the main stage, together they come up to just half of the total space of the theater. So what most people think of, you know, we need a stage and we need places for people to sit, that's only half of the story. So you can see what else they have, lots and lots of other stuff. One of the things that I think is probably most critical is that they've got this back 40 stage, which is the room directly behind the stage that's completely close-offable, which means that if the theater group is in a rehearsal mode for a couple of weeks or for 4 weeks before they get to the dress rehearsal and the performance, they can be doing all of their rehearsing in there, and the entire stage and auditorium is available to other groups during that time. So that's a pretty significant piece. And then everybody always says, just, you know, whatever you think you need for storage, just take it and double it, basically. So a lot of people that I've spoken with have said that's a place where, and they actually do have a little place offsite where they keep some things. But you'll also notice that they have a workshop. So they have their own workshop right integrated into this 9,900 square feet where they've got a shop where they can make their sets. Okay, any questions so far? All right, let's move on here. So how is this used? So it's used by 5 chartered clubs plus Friends of the Library. And the 5 chartered clubs you'll see appearing here. So this is the equivalent of our Players Club. It's called Theater West. They have 280 members. They do 3 shows with 8 to 9 presentations for each show during the 8-month season. So basically around 25 events per season. They almost always completely sell out. So that's kind of an interesting thing. So then you've got the Western Airs as a choral group. They do 8 events, 4 in December and 4 in April. The Dance Sensations, and that also sells out very well. I think the Dance Sensations is a little bit, it's not always sold out, but 6 events, 3 in November and 3 in February. The Music Club has 1 event per month, and the Photography Club has 1 event per month as well. The thing that you should notice about this is that this theater is not used for bringing in outside entertainment. We'll get to that later on. This is almost all for in-house activities. All right, next slide, please.
It's a nice player.
Okay, so we actually have this. So I picked 2. I'm going to just show you. This is the November one. The next slide is the January one. But this is what they work off for their Stardust Theater. They break each day into 3 4-hour set components, or 3-hour components. So you've got morning, afternoon, and evening. And then you've got, of course, in each one of these little things, like, so FL stands for Friends of the Library, which is the group, by the way, that puts on the weekly movies that take place there. If you see, so here, obviously, what's happening, if you look at this, DS stands for Dance Sensations. They've got a performance in here, don't they? So what their performance in November, you'll notice that they got an afternoon block, and then these 2 evening blocks and a matinee performance on Sunday. But as you notice, there's not a single weekday that doesn't have some use of the theater, and on most days it's used for even 2 of the 3 blocks that would be available. All right, let's look at the January one then. So the January one is actually even a little bit more crowded, and you'll see again, what you've got going on here, the Theater West has obviously got a show going on. So you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, looks like 10 different presentations of this with 296 seats per. So that's, and they obviously wouldn't be doing 8 or 9 presentations of it if they weren't selling out the theater. Okay, let's go on to the next one then. So this is what their seating looks like. You'll notice that there are some theaters that tend to be wider and not as deep. If you've got the stage up here in the front, they tend to have more seats going this way and not as many rows going back. And then sometimes theaters are exactly the opposite. It's relatively narrow and it goes back quite a bit. But this is just how they get their 296 seats. And they do for, so remember they have no stairs here, so they do have the capability of people using mobility devices, wheelchairs, walkers, and so forth, and they have these spaces in the back for their ADA compliance. Next slide. Okay. So this is moving down then to the Goodyear 55 plus Robeson community that's there. Just to give you an idea of their size, they're not quite there yet. They're still building, but they're shooting to have 6,100 dwelling units. We have 27,500, so they're a little bit less than a quarter the size of Sun City, 11,000 residents. Their theater has 332 seats. It's integrated into their Tuscany Falls clubhouse, so it's part of a larger building. And I'm calling this one a hybrid model. Remember Sun City West, we said, does almost only in-house productions. And this is a hybrid model in that they have both hired in external entertainment as well as homeowners groups. And yeah, let's go ahead and go on to the next one. I'm still awaiting the dimensions on this, how many square feet it is. As I said before, all I know is that Jim Loman said it was substantially smaller than 35,000 feet. This is what their seating looks like. Next slide. So these are some pictures, so it gives you an idea of what.
Can you step to the right and get it? No, that's the right. Sorry, the other one.
Okay. So it gives you a little idea of what it looks like. You'll notice that they do have stairs here in contrast to the Sun City West one, which is just a ramp. And you know, part of the trade-off that you have there, now they do have places, of course, where wheelchairs and walkers can get to, but part of the trade-off there is simply that the rake is what I've learned, what you call the head-over-head distance in a theater, and that is going to be higher when you have stairs than when you have a ramp. A ramp requires it to be a much lower slope, and as, yeah, so you have a little bit better lines of sight by doing this. Okay? All right? Yeah, that just gives you another view of it. Okay, so this is what their external, so what their external entertainment looks like. And, sorry, Tracy was explaining to me that, so this is what she said to me. She said, if I had a 750 to 1,000 seat theater, I could do so much more. But remember, they don't have a sun bowl, they don't have a sundial auditorium the way that we do. So this is, she said, when we do an external, higher end, external entertainment, she has to restrict it, okay? You could hire in more at a time, but they don't sell to the general public at all. And she said people have limited budgets about how much they're willing to spend on entertainment, and so you have a certain number of events. And she said, and on top of that, our homeowner groups, which is the internal side of that coin, are always begging for more space as well. So they do double shows. So generally, when you do a double show, it's at 3 p.m. and at 7 p.m. They sell out all 28 events. Then, so that's the concerts. Then they've got these performing artists, seasons per season. They do double shows. They're selling out all 12 shows. And then 1 to 2 concerts a month during the summer, where they just do a single show at 7 p.m. So the building is used during the summer months as well for external entertainment. And the next slide will show you some of the internal. They have 4 groups. basically one that does musical plays, one that does non-musical plays, a choral ensemble, and a big band. They do 2 shows per group, about 7 events per show. They're not complete sellouts, and each group has many rehearsals. So I didn't get the same calendar of events, but you definitely get the impression that this is a building that is used every day, at least during the 8 months of the winter season. All right, now, we thought that this was a theater that belonged to another 55-plus community because we've always heard that Green Valley Recreation is like Sun City. Well, I found out that it's very much not like Sun City, actually. The Green Valley Theater is actually like the Peoria Theater. It has no connection with the Green Valley Recreation Centers whatsoever, but I still think there's something valuable to learn from it very, very quickly here. So it was, there was a bond issue that was floated in 2009. It was the second phase of a 3-phase project, the third phase of which has got hit by the 2008-2009 financial crisis and probably is never going to be built. The first phase was a community college program, and the second phase was this performing arts center. So that's what it's a 501c3. It's open to the general public. I think there's another line here, isn't there? Yeah. And they do, and this is what I think is pretty remarkable, because they only have 203 seats. You'll see some pictures in just a minute. But they do 160 shows per year in that small little theater. Only to say that if we chose to build a small theater, there are plenty of groups out there that you could have come to provide entertainment on that scale. That's different than the Sun Bowl, that would be different from the Sundial programs that we have going already. 50,000 patrons annually that cycle through there. And I think the next one is the pictures, is that right? Okay, so it's a 203-seat theater. They have 4 rows of seats on the floor in the front, and the remaining is sloped with steps. Their stage is very, very limited. They actually purchase stage extensions. So about 20% of the shows are double shows, so 80% of the time it's a group or an individual that comes in to perform, and they just do a single show at 7 p.m. The price range tended to be between $15 and $30 per show. They have a variety of offerings. They've got music of all genres. They've got bands. There's a guy that does 5 lectures during the season on the history of Arizona, sort of in a consecutive fashion there. All right, next slide, please. So this just gives you a little idea, and I think the interesting thing about this is to see what the proportion is of the theater. So this part over here was the community college. Okay, so basically that was phase 1. This is phase 2 right here. This is the auditorium with the stage. It's pretty interesting, isn't it? When you compare that with here, you've got your dressing rooms, you've got a lobby, you've got set construction, a loading dock, music storage, a work yard. So the art gallery and the regular gallery is something that you wouldn't necessarily have to have here. It's just something that they combined in with all of this. But you can see that the actual, very much like what we see at the Stardust Theater, less than half of their total space was the auditorium and the stage, and here it's even a smaller percentage. Okay? Next slide, I think, just opens this up a little bit to give you an idea of what just the stage pieces look like here. They did say one of the problems is that their performers have to actually walk through the lobby in order to get to the dressing room. Not a good idea. Let's plan on not doing that.
I don't think we're planning.
All right, next slide, please. So there you get an idea of what it looks like, an even smaller group. And yeah, and this is sort of the other way around. This is the fixed seating is what's up there. This is the floor area is what's up there. The fixed seating is these seats back here. But you can see it's minimal compared. Of the 3 options that we've seen, it's definitely the smallest and coziest. But the gentleman, Chris Ashcroft, that I spoke with there on multiple occasions, actually said that's become one of the one of the draws actually of it. If you want a small, intimate theater experience, people understand that this is something that we can get at this location. All right. So basically there are 3 different ways of utilizing a theater. Maybe there's more, but for me right now, it's either the exclusively external, like in Green Valley, the exclusively internal, like the Stardust Theater, or the hybrid, the internal and external, like they have down at Pebble Creek. So it just presents, these are different options that you would have, all right? So this is my last slide, by the way, and I just titled it The Potential Usage of a PAC in Sun City, based on things that we've heard about, oh, this group might be interested, that group might be interested. It's a very, very crude estimation. I take full responsibility for it. I tried to be as accurate as I could. I tried not to inflate any numbers, to be very realistic about it. But I can show you that when you add all this together, so this is over 8 months, from September through April. 8 months at 30 days a month is 240 days. And when you add up these numbers here, you come up with 202 days, which is an 84% utilization of the building in terms of days of use. Okay, so anyway, I probably am disappointing the theaters group. I'm looking at this and saying, this is the exclusive use of the theater. So for each of the 3 shows that you do per year, you would have 1 week with the 2 weekends of shows and 1 week of dress rehearsal where you get the exclusive use of the auditorium. The idea being that in that rehearsal room, you can be doing rehearsals obviously more than just a week in advance of your performance. But that's how I came up with this 42-day number. But these were just to give you some ideas. So the sundial is really the only flat floor reservable space that we have that gets pinched for space. Okay, so anything that we could move out of sundial to another location is making sundial available for something that needs that large space. So our board meetings that we have here, we've never had, if we built a theater with 315 seats in it, we've never had 315 people at a board meeting or at a member exchange meeting. Okay, so that would be an option. Handbells, this was a group that actually wrote back when somebody approached them and said, would you be interested? And based on the combined performance and when I put down rehearsal, I'm talking about just the dress rehearsal. The idea being that, of course, they've got a music room where they could do all of the rehearsing for weeks in advance. But when they need to have the exclusive use of that space, that's how I came up with, that's what they had said, they thought 6 days per year. Choral events, the women's chorus, for instance, this would be a question. They get, I don't know, what is it, Chris, maybe 900 people that come to their concert? 700 people that come to Sundial. Well, they might say, if we have a choice of either doing 1 performance at Sundial with 700, or 2 performances at 350, or 3 performances at 250 each, we'd much rather do it in this kind of a location. We don't know. That's why I'm saying this is an estimation. I tried to be as honest as I could about it without inflating anything to try to, I have to make the case that we could actually use this. But there's that. There's the orchestra events. Again, that's, so recitals, this is, if you've got somebody, I don't know, somebody who's a semi-professional cellist that would like to come and perform, or a flautist, or whatever that might be, that would be an option. So library sponsor. Pardon me?
Piano club.
Piano, okay, I don't even have that on here. Yeah,
You don't have the ukulele club up there.
I do, I think. Ukulele is right over here, Bill.
They use it more than that.
So anyway, library sponsored events. So this is just the idea that, at the Stardust Theater in Sun City West, the library is actually responsible for putting on their weekly movies. But the library has also expressed an interest in doing things like having a book author come, and they said, we would love to have we're limited because we don't have space to be able to invite people to come use this. Just an idea that's out there. There are some caveats there because they're a county library. They can't restrict attendance to only Sun City people, for instance. But there is some sense that this would be something that would be very attractive for the community who lives here to be able to
However, many of those events are paid for by the Friends of the Library, which is not a county organization.
That's right. So the Friends of the Library, as I understand it, has said we would be very happy to make a donation over the course of the season to guarantee that we would get one performance per month and that we would just plan to do 8 things or 6 things or 4 things, whatever it might be. So the movies, the idea is that right now we have 2 movies per, it's the same movie, but we have a movie that's shown twice at Mountain View and I think twice at Mountain View and twice at Marinette. So there's 4 different showings of a movie right now, and this is just assuming that, you know, those 4 brought together. One a week is how I came up with the 35 weeks here. So lifelong learning is something that has been, you know, a little bit in a rocky place as of late, but I think part of it is that if we were to be able to resurrect a lifelong learning program, this is a place where you could have professors that could come in and to do I don't know, what do you want to hear about? What do you want to learn something about astronomy, or you want to learn about the Peloponnesian War in Greece, or whatever it is. You could have events like that that would take place. The Palms, this is our cheerleading squad. Somebody had mentioned travel logs, the idea that I'm not sure who would be behind doing something like that. Tip Top Dancers here, the Ukulele Club, the Camera Guild. Actually, I think that in Sun City West is every month. The Camera Guild really likes being able to put on a show of what they have. The Board Forum, this is just, you know, 2 days in October and November when everybody who's running for the board is invited to come and answer questions from the community would be an option. Community, and I put this under information, like the Viewpoint Lake meetings that have taken place at Sundial, not because we needed to have 1,600 seats, we didn't, but that sort of thing. Or this is the Sun City Community Assistance Network. Sometimes they have an event that they would like to put on. We'd like to explain to you how we can help you do your taxes or whatever it is. They sometimes come and ask for a place, or Shella sometimes has something that they would like to do. And we have always liked working together with them, seeing if we might have a facility that would meet their needs. So seminars and lectures, this might seem like it's a little bit like lifelong learning. And then there is, I just said, if we did outside entertainment, you know, so we've had, I've been to a few things at the Bell Social Halls. Once was, so a sort of a hobby scientist that came in and did a thing on centrifugal force. Was anybody else here at that thing? It was fascinating. I mean, it was like, I actually invited a bunch of kids from the church that I go to come, and they were like, this is just crazy. And he was just showing different things that can happen that all revolved around how does centrifugal force work, you know, whatever. And then unknown other I put down here. When the Italian festival comes, I don't know, but they want to do their flag waving ceremony in here or whatever it was, that, or maybe at Christmas time there might be events. I was just sort of guessing. But when I put this together in this form, I came up with 202 days of use out of a possible 240. So my point in all this is that I think that there's a very, very good argument for saying that a performing arts center would be very well received and highly used in Sun City. I don't think that there is justification for putting a really big theater in. And obviously, if you go up 50 feet, you're just talking about an explosion of cost compared to something that's much smaller than that. So what I did find out last night was that the most recent Robeson community has been built just on the northern side of Tucson. It's called Saddlebrook, and there's like Saddlebrook something in the Saddlebrook 2 or something like that. But they have a 488-seat theater that looks pretty much like the other one, the pictures that you saw here. And it's interesting. I watched a lady that does, she knows as much about the 55-plus communities in Arizona that I've ever seen, and she does all these YouTube videos on them. And I watched her do her presentation on this, and she said the thing about Robeson is every time they build, they figure out what can we do to improve what was missing in the place that we last built in. So the most recent one that they built has a 488-seat theater in it. But I don't know any more about it than that. Yeah.
Square footage of that facility?
I don't know, sorry. I looked hard, but it was after midnight last night when I was stumbling across this, and at some point I just said, you know, if we want to find out more, we certainly can, and I can, we can try to establish contact with somebody there. But this was basically just to give you sort of an overview about what other communities are doing and to consider doing something along these lines for our community.
You keep referring to Stardust Theater over and over and again and its size and everything, but your slide didn't say anything about how much too small they think it is. Is it 20% too small, 30% too small, 50% too small?
Let me turn that around and ask you a question. So I heard from somebody, see this number 296 stuck in my mind because I heard somebody say that's the magic number where the royalties that you pay to do a show kind of skyrocket. And then after that, I found out that the Sun City West Theater has 296 seats in it, and I just wondered, is there any, is that true, that
No.
296? It's not?
No.
I can follow up on that. I learned something when I was doing some investigating before. If you build a theater or pack over 300 seats, there's more requirements for ADA stuff. So this is why I'm going to do a presentation in 2 or 3 weeks. That's why I think the magic number is to keep under that 300. Because all the places that I've gone to, this is what they're following.
Interesting.
Do you know the cost of that Stardust? What did they pay to build that?
Oh, well, I know
It's been
something
there
about the
20
cost of
years.
the one that they tore down when they built that one. Do you know about the theater that got torn down in Sun City West? The Sun Dome. At the time it was built, it was the largest single-floor theater in the United States. And the entire country of the United States was 7,000 seats.
It failed.
And it went great for about 2 years, and then it just, they had the biggest shows that could possibly be, and, rented it out for high school.
Yeah, they did Barrett Jackson there, they did a lot of events there.
Yeah.
But it was just so cost prohibitive to keep it heated, cooled, and just the maintenance of it, so.
Yeah.
But you're talking about under 300 seats. Every one of the clubs that use it need more than that for one performance.
Well, actually,
Well, then they can
I would
choose.
push back on that for you because obviously the option that you have, so the places where you've got fully sold out stuff is external shows, events that you bring in, okay? So they say when we do a homeowner show, and this is true in Pebble Creek as well, they're not as well attended as the professional stuff that some people bring in. But I only can anecdotally say that I went to the Stardust Theater one time, I don't know, 1.5 years ago, and they were getting ready for a little sort of like a barbershop quartet thing that was going to be taking place. And I just started chatting with the ladies that were there, who were responsible for the setup, and just asked them, so, how satisfied are you with this? And they said, well, actually, we would be happy if it were just a little bit bigger. Is what they told me, just a little bit bigger.
I've talked to the theater people, and it's more than just a little.
Okay, but now you're adding in ADA and everything else.
Right, and the other option is simply you add another performance. And I get it when you say that, our tap dance people can't do 4 days in a row of tap dance. It's just too much.
I mean, we're good, but we're not.
Oh, come on.
But I don't see a problem with doing multiple shows.
Yeah.
So then smaller is better, so if you make the pickleball court smaller, you get more of them on the. Right?
Only if you make your paddle smaller.
That's right, you can play ping pong there instead, yeah.
When we looked at the theater that is designed up there, at 35,000 square feet, that, I couldn't figure out why it was that big. Bill, I understand you were asked, rebuild your theater, what do you want? I would have done the same thing. I'd have put everything in that thing that I could possibly come up with. And that's kind of what that is.
Yep.
But now we gotta back up and say, okay, we have this much land, we have this much money. What do we need to operate a decent theater, performing arts center, for the clubs that we have, so that they can do what they do effectively? We don't need all the glitter and the crystal chandeliers and the plush carpeting. And that's where I think we're coming back from. And that's where Sue and I came back to, okay, they've got 10,000, we picked 20,000. It was just a number we picked. And we were looking at 300 to 325 seats. If you sell out every one of your plays and fill that theater 8 times, I will pat you on the back and send you a cake every week. Things are just changing. We can't, Karen can't have.
You're ready to bake.
We're gonna.
I don't bake, I said I'd send. Karen can't have her 40 quarts either.
I'll bring the next meeting, we had for long-range planning, what we proposed to the board. And I'll bring that and you can see what we passed. So it kind of got blown up from there, and I don't know where and how, but it is too large, but it needs to be bigger than 296 seats.
325.
How much? How much bigger?
400 seats would be good for everybody.
Well, for 400 seats, what size theater do you have to have?
Well, I'm not an architect, so I'll work on it.
Because if they've got 296 in roughly 5,000 square feet.
Yeah, have you ever been to a show at the Stardust?
Yes.
You can see over the person in front of you. That rake is so small that you can't see
Yes.
past the person in front.
I agree with you 100%.
Okay, so now, every time you take something away, that's what you're dealing with. Pretty soon, you're gonna have a thing like a rinky dink where you look like this. Look like
No.
that.
Okay.
There are certain things
Steve,
that are not.
I think, has a comment, so that we don't monopolize conversations.
My son is, he runs a theater in Atlanta, and they just were remodeling it. And he said to me, you should try to keep it under 330 seats. Because, he said, the cost to go up to 450. You could take that money you're saving by making it a little smaller and do the special effects. And I went to the Broadway Theater the other night, and they got the rear projection screen. They just put it in, and it was absolutely beautiful. And it cuts way back on your props that you need, so you don't need as big of a theater to store and build all the props. Just one thing to think of. Thank you.
And does everybody understand what that is, a rear projection screen?
No, this is not a real projection. This is the LED board, as he's talking about.
Is that what it was?
It's an LED, a huge LED screen that fills the backstage.
Okay.
Yeah, they said they used it for the first time the other night.
It's pricey.
So when we went to see the Mesa Fine Arts Building where they do their musical theaters, and they had a rear projection screen there. And so the way that works is that instead of having all these massive pieces of plywood that are making that get painted and cut and turned into your screen, instead you just project it from behind. You don't want to project from front, because then you would have the shadow of all the actors between the projection unit and the screen in the back. So when we talk about rear projection, it means that from behind they're actually putting a scene up on this screen, and apparently it's quite phenomenal what can be done. So it's just something that has made theatrical production so much, a little bit easier to manage, and you save all along the line. You don't need to produce as much, you don't need to save as much. So that's an option that would exist. Tom?
You did a better job than I ever could do on a lot of this, so I appreciate that very much. Why is Sun City Grand not in here?
Because they don't have a standalone pack. They
Well,
bring
they
in,
have that. They have a stage, they have seats, they do shows, and I saw them.
well, I know, almost everybody does. So even at Green Valley, for instance, the way that Green Valley works, if you're interested in this, is there are about 100 different HOAs, and some of them are ropes and communities. So if you live down there in Green Valley, 90% of the population is a member of a 55+ community. And some of the properties require membership in Green Valley Recreation, and some of them allow it, and some of them are not even age restricted. So you can belong to a system, so that the Green Valley Recreation runs rec centers and golf courses. In that sense, they're like us. That's what they do. But you pay
I'm confused. They have a theater and it's not listed.
So the theater that is there is the Pima County. It's not a theater that belongs to the rec centers.
Okay.
However, the gentleman who runs the CPAC there, the Pima County Theater, is in very close communication. He's in the Rotary Club with the people that are from the Robeson community there, which is called Quail Creek, I think, and something else. They do have auditoriums, just like Sun City Grand does. It's an auditorium, but it's a flat floor space with folding chairs. And one of them is 400, and another one of the HOAs down there has a 500-seat auditorium, which is what we have right now at both Mountain View and Sundial. We have that already. And what we're saying is that we want something, we're looking at building something with fixed seating in it as opposed to
That was confusing. That's still confusing because I went to ramp seating at a theater over in Sun City Grand, but that is separate.
Well, I think what I understand is that they have risers that you have to bring in risers, and then you put the risers down and you put chairs on them, and then you have another riser and you put chairs in order to get that.
Well, yeah, but I'm saying you're listing theaters in the area, and I want that to be part of it. Should be part of the discussion.
It's not a theater, it's an auditorium. Yeah, that's why it's not. Yeah, move on.
If you're talking about a multi-purpose. Right. Okay. Secondly, our day use is about double. Would have to be double that. Because you're not, we have set building, it takes at least 10 to 14 days. And then a week of dress rehearsal, and there's a rehearsal in between, a pickup rehearsal between the two performance weekends. So
okay.
All those days combined comes up in the 80s.
Okay, well, I mean, the question is to what degree some of those could be in the rehearsal room that's behind
No,
the
I
stage.
think we're talking about, that's not the issue. I'm talking about rehearsal time. The dress rehearsal must be done on the stage. I'm not talking about rehearsing. I'm talking about rehearsing in a separate room. So rehearsal and tech week. There's the performance week, there's a pickup rehearsal, and there's stage building for every show.
Well, maybe if you have a rear projection screen, you won't need that much time.
Maybe you're not.
So all I'm
That
saying
needs
is
to
that
be accepted as a number out there, please.
Okay, I'm saying I can, as I said, this was a very crude estimation, and if you think that number needs to be doubled, there are exactly 40 extra days in that period of time that could be filled with that. So,
First of all, I want to thank you for such a great presentation. My question is, now, the plans that they had, now, as long as we already have an architect that, and all that money we put into it, and all that time, if you use that same architect, I'm sure, I worked for an architect before, and they can cut that down, so maybe it is a 325-seat facility, you know, without changing architects. And another thing that Anita and I have discussed is the elaborate entrance there that the rotunda. You know, things can be eliminated and changed to stay with the original plan without changing architects and not.
Yeah. So I get what you're saying. We are planning we actually today discussed the fact that we are going to reach out to Scott Walker as one of 3 different architects that we would go to and say, here's a conceptual plan. What would you charge us to turn this into a site plan? And we're going to ask CCBG, we'll ask somebody else, and we'll ask somebody else, and they're going to have about a week time to say to us, this is what we can offer. And our state, the other thing is it has to be ready by the day after Labor Day, so by September 5th.
No problem.
Right.
Someone shows a day.
And we'll see. So CCBG would be in that mix, Anna. So they would be there, and we would see. It's quite possible that their deep familiarity with the property and so forth would allow them. Yeah,
Perfect.
But we haven't made the decision definitely to go with them, but it's an option that exists.
Okay, thank you.
What is the current measurement of the stage at Mountain View?
Good.
Do you know? I mean, I'm just curious as to what it is now and what it is that, like ideally, if you could get the size stage you want, what is it that the players would be looking for?
It was on one of the drawings.
I don't know.
Is it on one of the drawings back
there?
Paul's looking it up.
On a pink drawing.
Bill, that's a question I have for you. What size room do you need for a dressing room? Can you provide us with those kinds of numbers?
Sure.
Do you need?
Have you ever seen what we have now?
No.
Well, then you should go back there and
Well, I know you need more than that.
Okay.
But what do you need? Do you need 12 by 12 or 20 by 20, or what do you need for a dressing room? What do you need for rehearsal space? What do you need for storage? And give us some square footage numbers?
I'll bring
They
it.
already, okay.
I'll bring it next time.
Let's move over to Jim.
When the gentleman back there was talking about how much more times they need the theater, the more times you need that theater, you're gonna squeeze out other clubs, which makes your people less reluctant to want to spend the kind of money just for you if you've shoved out about another 6 to 8 different clubs.
I'm just talking about our current usage and taking out the rehearsal time and putting them in a separate room. I'm trying to play.
I'm just telling you, the more you shove out, the
I don't wanna
less
shove.
population you're gonna
No,
get.
I'm not shoving, we're just talking about allocation currently and what.
All it is scheduling.
Yeah, scheduling, just like
All
what
it
she
is,
said
all it
before.
is scheduling carefully.
When you have morning,
I didn't
Yeah.
know that.
midday, and
Jeff,
night.
can you go back to those calendars from November?
Yeah.
So let me just show you something to give you an idea about this too. That remember that the Stardust Theater divides their day into a morning, an afternoon, and an evening. And when you look at that, even when their Theater Works program has a production on, they don't have 24-hour exclusive use of that. They have a block of time, or maybe 2 blocks. Let's look at that. So let's see. So
This is
here.
January?
Yeah, so the TW is the Theater Works, okay? So you can see that on this day, they've got a show here, but they only have it for the evening slot.
Right.
Okay, here, Theater Works has it, but only for the afternoon slot. Okay, so even at that, you're not talking about necessarily having the exclusive use of it for the entire day, which I don't know. I've sort of heard through the grapevine that that's become a little bit of a problem at Mountain View, that there's sometimes some real tension. Well, we're in here and nobody else can be in here, and, that is a scheduling thing that needs to just be ironed out. And to be fair, to think about, okay, what percentage of the population is involved in the theater program, what percent are involved in choral productions, music, whatever it is, and there has to be some kind of an allocation there that is fair to everybody. And also that justifies having a theater like this. So anyway, that just gives you an idea to say that, okay, and I'm pretty sure, Tom, that your people don't want to be there from 8 a.m. until 10 p.m.
No,
right?
your original statistics on that one slide were days, and I was just using apples to apples. Certainly, our schedule looks like that too. We rehearse 1 to 4 in the afternoons. Then we do self-billing maybe in the evening or whatever, work.
And if there's a conflict,
Right. Yeah.
there's
And
no
so
reason
just
we can't
to
reverse
give you
them
an
from
idea
8 to
there,
noon.
so Sun City West is, the person that I've been in touch with is the person that's kind of over all of activities, and she did mention to me that they are in the process of hiring somebody who's going to be responsible for the Stardust Theater, which they have not really had up until this point. So this is just another question. I've sort of asked people, what kind of staffing does having this kind of a theater require? Because when you commit to building something, you don't just have the brick and mortar costs, you have the ongoing costs for insurance and roof repair and utilities and HVAC and all that kind of stuff, and staffing concerns. So, by the way, when I asked this question about Mountain View 2, I didn't have the world's best relationship with the board that I was serving on at the time. The response to me was, oh, we have people that have plenty of time on their hands. Adding a theater will be easy for us to do with our current custodial
10 performances a day.
So I'm sensitive to that, and I have asked, but at Sun City West, that's what they have at the theater down in Goodyear, at the Pebble Creek Theater. They have a full-time, so the lady Tracy, that's over their entire activities program, and then Matt, that does the PAC, and he has trained 4 volunteers to be able to do all the stuff that needs to happen. So they handle it with a single person, Sun City West handles it with a single person. That's probably something good to know, but that's one person that we don't yet have on our staff.
Well, we have an entertainment and events person. Maybe that person needs an assistant.
Well, I think
This is-
the question is open. To what degree would this even interface with our entertainment and events program, which right now we're talking about Sundial and Sun Bowl, right?
Mm-hmm.
And there's possible, and I've thought to myself, I wonder if I should go to Teresa and say, when I put in and said that I'm, guessing 10 or 15 events that are smaller than Sundial and Sunbowl, that would draw a crowd of 250 people.
Bring in money.
Right. Would you be interested in looking for that? I think up to this point, because we haven't had the place to put something like that on that's attractive, we haven't pursued that. But there's quite a bit of possibility, I think, for some overlapping responsibilities.
Well, I think Joanne does, I mean, she's scheduling all these clubs and all these crazy rooms. She's very good at that. Does she need more? No. But maybe there's somebody that can be, between the two places, work this out.
It's obvious when you build something that you haven't had before, you have to think about staffing, you have to think about increased janitorial duties, about repair duties, about custodial duties, all those things. Yes, there is going to be an increase. And that's just one of the things we have to be aware. When you build something new, you have to calculate that into the
But will there be a reduction in cost because we're not fixing what's broken in an old place?
Yeah.
Sometimes things work that way. Yeah.
It's just a suggestion. They could even bring in free shows just from the schools around in the area. These kids that they have the band and the choirs. I mean, and that would be.
There are homeschooling pods all over the place. And sometimes these are tremendously gifted children that are looking for a place to perform. And I think, we're like, this is like going to watch your grandchildren. Wouldn't that be fabulous to go? I think that there's probably just, I actually think that the problem is more likely to be not being able to handle the amount of things that would be possible for us to do, probably. The big concern that we had was, are we going to invest in something that's going to keep them sitting around idle a lot of the time? And all I can say is that looking from these other three things, know that there's no reason to expect that that would be the case. And then that last slide that showed, projected use, add 40 seats for 40 days for the Players Club, is simply showing that the likelihood that it would end up sitting around idle is extraordinarily small. But we don't want that to happen, right?
I have a question for John.
Yes, sir.
Let me move out of the way.
No, I've been on a lot of committees, and we're supposed to be a committee that's going to report our findings to the board. So far, all of our meetings has been the board telling us, when are we going to have the time for this committee to sit and talk to each other and make decisions?
That's a good question. When would you like that?
Tomorrow, next week. And the rest of the weeks.
That's too
Good luck.
What's the sense of it?
Does anybody else agree, or am I just barking up a tree?
Well, I would love to sit down with you. In fact, I was hoping I could get your phone number. I'm serious. That's why I'm asking,
And German chocolate cake.
No, that's why I was asking you, because I'm curious as to what it is that the players are looking for on the stage and making sure that what we need as a performing dance group, that they're aligned.
Okay.
And so I would love to sit down, and with the dressing rooms and the rehearsal space and all that, I would love to sit down so we kind of have a cohesive, package. But I'm gone now.
Yeah, but the whole committee needs to do that.
So,
I'd love to do it. I'll do it with anyone.
just what I could say to that is that that's for a later stage. So right now what we're saying is that we want to be able to present the architects with an idea. And so this is just one thing. If we say yes, definitely a pack, the next thing would be to approximately what size, and I think we're somewhere between 300 and maybe 400, I'd say 300 and 350 maybe. But with all the backstage, the back 40 stuff that you need, very definitely, that's, a big component about that. And then the question would be, where do we want to build it? Once we've done that, then you enter into a more detailed design phase, and that's where...
I just didn't want to miss that detailed design phase.
That's not going to be happening in August, I don't think so.
Okay, all right.
You should be fine.
So I wanted to know.
Are we just...
I just wondered, what were you planning for the next?
I think we have that.
Oh, we have the.
Okay.
But next week, we have 3 people that want to present their ideas. on what we should do at Mountain View and Lakeview, Rusty and Buckle.
Paul, are you part of that?
So this is our opportunity to get people to stand up and present what they think their idea is. Bill, you're welcome to do the same, of course.
No, that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about all of us just brainstorming, sitting down and talking to one another and coming up like a committee works. This isn't how a committee works. So that's what I want to do, is everybody just talk it out. Like we have pickleball over here, and I'm not against pickleball, strange as it may sound. I agree that they need more courts, but they also know that we need a performing arts center. So we need to talk and finesse amongst ourselves, not having someone tell us what we should be thinking.
Okay, so I'm going to sound horribly defensive in this bill, but I think the important thing is that you need to be working for a common set of facts, right? And there's a lot of stuff where it's pretty amazing. Even I have had ideas that have turned out to be wrong afterwards. I was very convinced that I knew the thing that wasn't really true. And so we have not been trying to tell you what to think. We have been trying to provide you with accurate facts so that we have a common basis for saying, okay, these are the things that we commonly understand to be true. So I'm sorry, I know it sounds really defensive to say that, but it doesn't come from a desire on our part to be telling you what to think. It's simply to say these are, anybody here would have been welcome to go. I spent about 25 hours doing research on PACs in the last 2 weeks. I would have been happy to outsource that to anybody who wants to do it, believe me. So, and it's not an attempt for me to tell you this is what you should do, but these are things that I have discovered in the process that I think are helpful to Holbert. Jim, you've been so patient.
Well, we know that 300 is a number that people have tried to stay under for ADA. And we know that the Players Club would like to have at least 400. Somebody needs to come to us before we make that decision and say, if you add 100 more seats, what is it going to cost you more than, not just because you added extra space, but what is the extra cost?
So that is the reason that we plan to hire an architectural consultant, because that is the person who will know the answers to that question, and we won't be guessing about it or reporting on hearsay. Well, I heard this, and I heard that, and I heard the other thing.
I'm not opposed to the extra 100 seats, but does it cost so much more money to add that extra 100 seats?
Right.
Young lady.
Question, can you go back to the floor plan of the Green Valley Theater?
That's towards the end.
Towards the end.
450, I think.
This one?
Keep going, keep going.
We're getting there.
So there was a larger one that showed
The whole
community
thing,
theater.
and then the one that
This
owns
one?
the theater one.
So this is
That's
what
the
you see.
theater, that's the auditorium
The
and
picture.
stage, and then you have the back 40.
This is the dressing, bathrooms. This is a lobby, this is set construction, a loading dock, music storage, a work yard.
So my point is, if you're going to change your seating from 200 or 300 to 400, it's only that little auditorium block that changes size. The rest does not change size at
With
all.
the potential for bathrooms would be a possibility that you might need some more bathroom space and more seats, but yeah.
We don't necessarily know that because we don't know how big those rooms are they've got on that drawing.
Could you raise your hand to be with
Yeah,
that?
right.
Sorry.
Lana,
Do you have, is there a floor plan for the, what currently they have in their architectural drawings? Do they have a floor plan for the Performing Arts
for
Theater?
who? Stardust or us?
Here, for the one that was proposed.
Yeah, it's in this.
Is there any way that can be put on a,
You wouldn't
On the
see it. There's
screen?
so much detail, you wouldn't be able to see
Yeah.
all that.
That's on a huge piece of paper.
Yeah, but, so one thing I can tell you about that right now, though, is that one of the reasons that it ended up being so large was the requirement that was given to the architects, no stairs. Okay, all ramps. Now, when you do that, in order to get a line of sight, your rows of seats have to be further apart from one another, right? To give yourself just a little bit more loft to look over the person in front of you. And they did all the testing. They said the lines of sight are that way. But if you were to do something where you had ramped seating in the front to be able to handle all your ADA requirements and your clients that come that you want to be comfortable there. And then you had rake seating behind that with a higher rake. You don't have to build as much space to do that. And furthermore, the people that are in the last row are a lot closer to the stage than they are if you only have ramps going all the way back.
That's true.
But I'm not trying to pretend like I'm an architectural genius or
And the
anything. It's
Performing
just-
Arts Center at Mesa Community College is a good example of what
Yeah.
she was saying.
Yeah.
I went back there and
Actually-
looked at them, and I'm
Yeah.
like, I'm looking at this. I
Actually,
still can't make heads or
yeah.
tails of it. There's too many lines.
At Mesa, what they do is that when you come in, there's like a platform area in the seating that's at the ground level when you come in, and you can put in the whole width of the theater. You can put companion chairs and wheelchairs and so forth. And then you've got staired seating below that and staired seating above that.
That's what they have in Chandler.
Could you please, Thomas?
Yeah, CGI, we were there, Mr. Collins and I, and some others were at a meeting where they had a beautiful slideshow that showed the kind of thing, exactly what you want. I've been begging people, try to get that for us to see.
Yeah.
We paid for it, we might as well be able to have it. And I wish you all would work to get that here, honestly, because that answers so many questions. And on the rate issue, yes, but the idea of the rate was also because we got handicapped legs. We got old legs that are trying to get over other old legs. And that spacing was actually sold to me primarily to allow us to get into the middle seats.
Right, as I understood it, you could actually have a walker go through in front of somebody seated at a seat.
Wow,
That's
that's an exaggeration.
Shouldn't that architect be able to give you that?
Right, so and let me just back up and say, I don't think that that's what we as a community, those are not the decisions that we're making. So our goal is by July 15th to have agreed to one basic conceptual plan. And I think from what I can say here now, I think, with some certainty, is that it will include a standalone path. So, we're making progress in that sense. Now, the next thing we have to do is to look at what are the pros and cons of building it at Mountain View? What would be the pros and cons of building it at Bell? What would be the pros and cons of building it at Lakeview? So those are some things that, and we want that kind of, we may end up with a big whiteboard here where you can come with a Post-it note and say, this is what I like, this is what I don't, but to get that kind of information. And I realize it might sound really idealistic to think that we as a committee would be able to coalesce around a single plan, but I'm hoping for that, but this is not one where we've drawn out, this is where the boundaries of the building would be. That's what you ask your architect to do in the site plan. It's very much like what Chaff and Susan and Anita did. They gave us last week, where was it? Here it is, right here. It doesn't have to be highly detailed. That's not what we're trying to come up with here. But a detail that said, okay, we would like to see the pack continue to stay at Mountain View. We would like to see it be about this size. So we as a community don't have to say we wanted to have 296 or 312 or 313 or 349 chairs. We don't have to do that. We're going to give rough ideas, and then the architect is going to be able to come back and say, do you know that if you stay under X, it will have these implications for you. If you go over X, it will have these. At that point, then, we have decisions to make. But we're wanting to come up with this sort of a thing, because this is like the most rough idea that you can possibly imagine, and that's kind of all we're asking ourselves to come up with as a group.
So by July 15th, we're just talking about the pack?
No.
We're talking about everything?
Yeah.
Boy, there's a lot of questions here to be answered.
I'm not going to be here.
Yeah, well, let me just, so that you all understand why this is the case, is that then you have to go to the three architects, and we're going to talk to the architects in advance and say, we're going to be coming to you with some plan that we don't know what it's going to be, but we're going to be coming to you. Be thinking about whether you will be able to have a site plan for us by September 5th, and if so, what you would charge us for it. Okay? The reason that we're doing that is that we've set ourselves a hard deadline, September 28th, We're making a presentation to the board, and this is a presentation that's going to have an architect's stamp of approval on it. This is feasible, and this is approximately what it will cost. So if they come back to us the day after Labor Day, and that first Friday in September is like the 8th or something like that, when we meet again, we have 3 meetings before the board meeting to reflect on the site plan. But that's basically, that's where we are, folks. You know, this is, and it partly is because we are so committed to not just endlessly delaying and delaying and delaying. We want something to happen as quickly as is possible. Jean?
I just wanted to mention, Bill, this area is open for all of you to come. If you want to plan a session to have your cohorts here, where you can all just do what you wanted, please let us know. I'll be happy to come and sit. Pardon me?
I just listened to the committee.
Well, the next 2 weeks, it's going to be closed, but we have moved the meetings to Social Hall.
No, actually, so you're going to see in the paper, it's going to say Lakeview Social Hall 3. That's not true. It's actually going, so when you read that in the paper, just say, aha, I know that that's not a true statement. We tried to get this ironed out before the deadline was for getting it into the Independent. There will be an email blast going out. It's going to be in the Sonora room, which is the room at the new Grand Center, Grand 2, I think they call it. And it has 2 big screens and I think the built-in overhead projection thing, so we should be able to use, to have a really nice setup for that. For those 2 days, that's June 30th and August 7th, July 7th. July 7th.
At the Grand.
Yeah.
And then, Bill, if you and your group of theater people want to do a presentation, this is where you could, I think, Tom, you just mentioned you have a great, stellar PowerPoint.
No, I'm saying the architects have it, but that's been mixed.
Okay, well,
and so this building,
dance ladies want to get together.
So this building, Chris just said, is closing on Monday. They're doing some roof work and it's just too dangerous for you to be here. So I'm sorry. In every other circumstance, we would just welcome you to come here and do that. We don't have that option, but if you want to try to pull something like that together, please let us know and we'll talk to somebody about, I mean, we should have plenty of spaces where people could meet to do that. It's June afterwards, right?
I just want to add that Sue, even though she's in Seattle with our daughter-in-law, or my son's in Australia, is working on next week the presentation of converting that into she's an architectural engineer. She's been working on the layout. She's going to present to you an architectural layout of that. Of this.
Right.
So, what I said, what I gave you last week.
Yeah.
So when will we have an opportunity to ask questions about the pools? We have a water volleyball. Is that what they want? Is that the size they want? How many games can you play on that at one time?
This is what the committee's doing.
Yeah. We don't know any of that information.
Yeah. So Mountain View option 2 did include a sports pool for water volleyball. Water volleyball has about 120 members in it, and it's grown quite a bit. And they use this pool out here right now, which, by the way, they love. So we have looked at a couple of different options, one of which would have been building a pool right across the wall. Can't do that because of deed restrictions and so forth. But part of it has been doing a deep dive into the data that's here and finding out how many hours does water volleyball feel like they need, and we don't have anybody today. So last
she left.
Oh, she left already. Yeah. So Scott was here for a while. I forgot what's her name. Wendy. Wendy. Yeah.
And she's aware.
Right. So there's a very let me just put it this way. Water volleyball needs space that meets the needs of their community, of their club. Whether Sun City needs to have an 8th swimming pool is a matter for discussion.
Well, I've also heard that the lap swimmers that swim competitively need a separate, because we talked about linking the pools and sharing the water and all the equipment and all that. Lap pools have to be colder than the spa pool to train in the colder water for their competitions. I don't know if that's true, it's what I was told.
It's
Oh,
true.
that's one pool for that. Yeah.
Okay,
And even-
I think you have to remember that what the charter and the motions said, those are the two things that we need to concentrate on.
Well, the pools are part of that, Jean, because option 2 had a
Yes.
playing pool and a sports pool.
Are we,
So
out
at
of
some
town?
point, we could share that information with you.
1 minute.
1 minute.
1 minute.
All right, I've just got one more thing to say. I don't want this multi-purpose auditorium gymnasium to just go by the wayside. That can be used for a lot of things, like, overflow for dancing. You can do the basketball. You can set up portable pickleball courts in there. You can play badminton in there. You can play volleyball. People that don't want to be in a swimming pool to play volleyball, I would want to be in a pool to play volleyball. Because I don't, that's just kind of finicky that way. But anyway,
So you want
there's
that
a
to
lot
be on
of-
the table?
yeah, there's
Okay.
a lot of activities that can be done in a multi-purpose gymnasium, auditorium that a lot of people can use, and I think that's important that we have that extra space, or we've got good hardwood floor someplace else for dancers. When you figure you've got, line dance has between 550 and 600 members. You've got, country dance has 425, and just one rock and roll club has 400.
Okay.
So anyway, I'm done.
I need to address that, and to your point, with Aqua Fitness, when we have registration, we can have 300 to 500 people in the auditorium, and we use up the whole auditorium. In August, they're doing work at sundown. We don't have a room to accommodate our registration, and we're working on something that'll help us do it, but it's not the maximum. So having another facility that can handle that number of people would certainly be worthwhile.
Okay. Hey, thank you everybody for coming. Wonderful discussion.
And
This is a copyrighted production of the Recreation Centers of Sun City Incorporated and is intended for the sole purpose of informing our recreation center members. Any duplication, copying, transmission, broadcast, or use, including electronic and social media, is strictly prohibited without the prior written consent from the Recreation Centers of Sun City Incorporated. Thank you for watching.